For years, I was the dependable one, the golden goose, as I later came to realize. At 32, I had built a stable life for myself in the city, working hard and rising in my career, yet I never failed to return home for the holidays, arms filled with expensive gifts, cash tucked into envelopes, and my heart wide open, ready to give. I saw myself as the one who held the family together. I paid for repairs on my parents' home, chipped in when my siblings fell short on rent, and always showed up for birthdays and Christmases with more than what was asked. It wasn't out of guilt. It was out of love, or at least what I thought was love. I never questioned the imbalance. If they needed help, I helped. If they forgot my birthday but expected me to show up with gifts, I smiled and delivered. I bought my nieces and nephews the toys their parents couldn't afford. I covered a few overdue bills without mentioning it. I was the go-to fixer, the he'll understand guy. And every Christmas, when I walked through the front door and was greeted by smiles and laughter, I thought I mattered. Not because of the money, but because I was part of something that felt like family. What I didn't see, what I refused to admit, was that my value in their eyes was tied directly to what I could provide. I was less a son or a brother and more a walking bank account wrapped in holiday cheer. I ignored the signs, the whispered requests that only came when I succeeded, the praise that always ended in a favor. I told myself they loved me, they just didn't know how to show it. But deep down, a part of me was starting to crack, and that crack would turn into a break the moment they took things one cruel step too far. That Christmas was supposed to be special. It was the first time I was bringing my girlfriend home to meet my family, the people I'd spoken so highly of for a year. I had built them up in her eyes as warm, quirky, loud but loving, the kind of holiday chaos you see in sentimental Christmas movies. She was nervous, of course, but excited. I promised her they'd love her. I believed it myself. I believed that even though they weren't perfect, they'd see how happy she made me and treat her with the kindness she deserved. At first, everything went well. My mom welcomed her with open arms, my dad made his usual corny jokes, and the rest of the family played along as if this would be a normal, joyful night. But I noticed things. Whispers between siblings, sideways glances, a strange tension that I couldn't quite name. Then came the trust game. It started innocently enough, blindfolds, guessing objects by touch, silly icebreakers. But then they crossed a line. They handed my girlfriend a raw onion, telling her it was an apple. They spun us in circles, threw water balloons at us, and then, worst of all, someone shaved off a piece of her hair while she was blindfolded. I'll never forget the look on her face when we removed the blindfolds. Humiliated, confused, mascara running down her cheeks. I reached up and found my own head had been shaved in patches too. And the worst part? They laughed. Full-on, belly laughs. Not playful or harmless, but mocking, cruel and loud. My mom wiped tears from her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the joy of watching us be humiliated. My dad just said, "It's tradition." That's when the illusion broke. In one moment, I realized everything I believed about my family was wrong. I had brought the woman I loved into a room full of people I thought I knew, only to have them show their true colors. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. I didn't say a word. I just took my girlfriend's hand and walked upstairs, away from the laughter that still echoed in the living room like some twisted victory parade. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her hair, uneven, wet, and tangled. I whispered apologies, but the truth was, no words could undo what had been done. I helped her clean up, trying to hide my own shaking hands. And in that quiet moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. When we came back downstairs, the room fell silent. They thought we were going to rejoin the fun, pretend it was all in good humor. But instead, I walked over to the Christmas tree, picked up the first gift, an expensive gaming console for my nephew, and headed straight for the door. "What are you doing?" someone finally shouted. "I'm leaving," I said calmly, "and these gifts are coming with me." Chaos erupted. My siblings yelled. My mom cried. My dad got angry, but I didn't stop. I loaded every carefully chosen gift into the trunk of my car. The leather bag for my sister, the golf clubs for my dad, the jewelry for my mom. Thousands of dollars I had spent, gone from under their tree in minutes. "You can't do this," my mom screamed. "It's Christmas." "No," I said, shutting the trunk. "Christmas is about love and respect, and you've shown me none of that." We drove away in silence, but the air between us wasn't heavy. It was light, like I'd finally unclenched a fist I didn't even know I'd been holding. As we neared the city, my girlfriend quietly asked, "What will you do with all the gifts?" I smiled for the first time that night. "We're donating them. The children's hospital could use a little joy." That night, we delivered every gift to kids who truly deserved to feel special. And in the process, I gave myself the greatest gift of all, the freedom to walk away from a family who never really saw me. The next morning, my phone lit up with dozens of missed calls and messages from my family. The tone shifted from outrage to guilt trips. "How could you do this to us on Christmas?" Followed by, "You owe your family an apology." But I didn't owe them anything. I had spent years being the dependable one, showing up every Christmas with gifts and good intentions. And in return, they humiliated me and the woman I love with a so-called prank that crossed every boundary of decency. A few days later, my 10-year-old niece, who once called me her hero, sent a quiet message. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was that bad." I read it more than once. Maybe the kids were just following the grown-ups' lead, not fully understanding the cruelty they were laughing at. Meanwhile, my girlfriend and I began building new holiday traditions, ones filled with kindness and authenticity. We donated the gifts we'd brought to a local children's hospital, where the joy we witnessed in those kids' eyes reminded us what the season is actually about. We also sent packages to shelters and families in need, spreading holiday cheer where it would be appreciated. The hospital staff even told us that some of those kids hadn't had a proper Christmas in years. That hit me deeply and confirmed I had made the right choice. My family kept reaching out, their words laced with shame, excuses, and desperate pleas. But I'd learned something crucial. Apologies without changed behavior are just manipulation. I don't need a family that ridicules me, then asks for forgiveness without growth. I need respect, decency, and people who lift each other up, not tear each other down for fun. This year, I didn't lose my family. I found myself. And for the first time in a long time, I stepped into the new year with peace, pride, and the kind of freedom that comes only from setting healthy boundaries. After the chaos of that night, my girlfriend and I drove home in stunned silence. I kept thinking about what had just happened, the way my own family had set us up to be publicly humiliated under the guise of a holiday prank. It wasn't just the blindfolds or the food tricks or even the hacked-off chunks of hair, it was the laughter. The kind of laughter that makes your skin crawl, the kind that doesn't come from joy but from cruelty. It dawned on me then, this wasn't just one bad joke. This was a reflection of how they really saw me. Someone to mock, not someone to love. I had given them everything year after year. Expensive presents, surprise visits, financial help when things got rough. And every time I chalked up their selfishness as family quirks. But this was different. It was deliberate. It was mean. And worst of all, it was done in front of the woman I love. I knew I couldn't just walk away without saying something. So I didn't. I took the very gifts I'd spent weeks thoughtfully picking out. The golf clubs for my dad, the designer purse for my sister, the jewelry for my mom, and packed them back into my car. The stunned looks on their faces were almost comical. They actually thought I would still hand out gifts after what they did. That I'd forgive and forget for the sake of holiday spirit. I left without a fight. No shouting match, no big scene, just a quiet, firm exit. And when my mother started calling days later, sobbing into voicemails and begging me to return, I didn't answer. Because that kind of love, the kind with conditions and cruelty, isn't love at all. Instead, my girlfriend and I donated every single gift to a local children's hospital. The joy we saw there reminded me that love is supposed to be warm, generous, and kind, not toxic and transactional. For the first time in years, I felt like I finally understood the difference. In the days that followed our dramatic exit, I found myself on the receiving end of a flood of messages. My phone was a war zone. Texts from my mother flipping between guilt and rage, voicemails from my father demanding I grow up, and even a few flying monkeys, aka extended relatives, scolding me for ruining Christmas. But despite all the noise, I felt strangely calm. I'd made a decision that night, not just to walk out of my parents' house, but to walk away from a lifetime of being taken for granted. I wasn't just done with the prank. I was done being their emotional punching bag, their financial crutch, their holiday entertainment. Every time I thought about my girlfriend, standing in that room, mascara running down her face, her hair uneven from the prank gone too far, I felt a rush of protectiveness. She hadn't signed up for that, and neither had I. Yet every year, I kept going back, hoping maybe this time it would be different. Spoiler alert, it never was. The guilt came in waves, as it always does when you've been raised to believe family comes before everything. But then I remembered something my therapist once told me. If someone treated you the way your family does, but they weren't related to you, would you still allow them in your life? The answer was a resounding no, and that realization became my anchor. Instead of responding to their manipulation, I redirected my energy. I focused on work. I focused on my relationship. I focused on my own healing. And for the first time in a long time, I began to build boundaries that weren't made of paper. I stopped answering the calls. I blocked the numbers. I said no and meant it. Walking away from your family isn't easy. It's heartbreaking. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the people you hope to build a future with, is to walk away from those who continually choose to hurt you. I didn't lose a family that day. I gained my freedom. 3 days after I walked out on Christmas, my inbox lit up with a flood of guilt-laced texts from my mother. Her messages swung wildly, from passive-aggressive jabs like, "So I guess you don't care about your family anymore," to pitiful pleas like, "Please just talk to me. We didn't mean to hurt you." But what struck me most was the complete lack of accountability. There was no apology, no recognition of how deeply they'd crossed the line. Just an expectation that I'd get over it and fall back into line like I always had. And for a moment, I almost did. That familiar tug of guilt crept in, whispering that maybe I was being dramatic. But then I remembered the look on my girlfriend's face, drenched, humiliated, her confidence shattered in front of a room full of strangers who were supposed to be family. I remembered the sound of my mother laughing as she stood there watching it happen. That wasn't a one-off. That was a pattern. So I held firm. I turned off my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I put myself first. That weekend, instead of wallowing in the wreckage, my girlfriend and I loaded all those expensive gifts, meant for people who had just humiliated us, into the back of my car and drove straight to the children's hospital. Watching the nurses' faces light up as we handed over toys, blankets, and electronics was the kind of joy I thought I'd find on Christmas morning. But this was better. This was real. No expectations, no strings, just kindness. That day, I realized that family isn't defined by blood or last names. It's defined by respect, by love that doesn't come with a price tag. My girlfriend saw me at my lowest and still stood beside me. My parents, on the other hand, saw me as a joke, a bank, a punching bag with a credit score. So I chose better. I chose peace over performance. I chose real love over tradition. And honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. The aftermath of that Christmas disaster wasn't just emotional, it was a reckoning. After spending my entire adult life contorting myself into someone who didn't make waves, I finally accepted a hard truth. I'd been raised to believe that enduring humiliation was a form of love, that tolerating cruel jokes, sacrificing time, money, and self-worth for the sake of family was normal. But that night cracked everything open. My girlfriend and I had driven away from my parents' house in silence, but what followed wasn't grief, it was clarity. The kind that comes when the mask finally slips and you see people for who they've always been. So I took action. I began to evaluate every thread still connecting me to that toxic web. I stopped answering calls from my siblings. I set up filters on my email. I even blocked my parents on social media after they started posting vague, guilt-baiting statuses like, "Some people forget who raised them." What they didn't understand was that I hadn't forgotten. I'd finally remembered who I was before all the emotional debt they'd buried me under. My girlfriend stood by me every step of the way. While I dismantled old routines, she helped me build new ones. We started hosting our own Sunday dinners, inviting over friends who felt more like family than anyone I shared DNA with. We took weekend trips, hiked trails we'd always talked about, and celebrated every small win. Each moment was a reminder. Life didn't have to feel like walking on eggshells. And the longer I stayed away, the more I realized how much I'd been giving without ever receiving. Not just money or time, but emotional labor, forgiveness, silence. That silence had protected them, not me. So I stopped being silent. When a cousin texted to just hear my side, I told her the truth. Not angrily, just honestly. And I didn't feel guilty about it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the dependable one who cleaned up messes. I was the one who walked away. And in doing so, I found something better than family obligation. I found peace. 3 months after that nightmare of a holiday, something unexpected happened. My niece reached out. A short, nervous email from Mason's daughter, who was barely 10 when all this happened. She wrote that she missed me, that she didn't understand everything the adults were fighting about, but she remembered how I used to bring cupcakes to Christmas, how I fixed her bike once, how I always listened when she talked. It caught me off guard. For all the years I spent being invisible to the adults, I hadn't realized I'd mattered to one of the kids. Her message was innocent and deeply human. And it reopened a question I'd wrestled with since walking away. What do we owe to the next generation when the older one failed us? I didn't respond right away. I needed space to process it. The last thing I wanted was to be pulled back into my family's dysfunction. But over time, I realized that she wasn't asking for money or explanations. She was asking to be seen, to be loved in a way I wish I'd been at her age. So, I replied, carefully, gently. I told her I missed her too, that I was always here if she wanted to talk, and that I hoped she was being kind to herself and others. That simple exchange sparked something new, a relationship built on respect, not guilt. We started writing back and forth, nothing heavy, just little updates, jokes, stories. It felt like healing in slow motion. My girlfriend, now my wife, was supportive but cautious. She knew how easy it would be for me to slip back into old patterns. But this time I held the boundary. I kept the door open for my niece, and only her. That's the part of the story I think people miss. Cutting off toxic family doesn't mean you don't love anyone left behind. It means you stop letting the hurt define you. It means you protect yourself so that if you choose to reach back, you do it from a place of strength, not survival. As time went on, I began to understand something deeper. Something I wish I had realized years earlier. Walking away from my toxic family didn't mean I failed them. It meant I finally succeeded in choosing myself. I'd spent most of my life being the dependable one, the peacemaker, the fixer. And for what? To be mocked, used, and discarded the moment I stopped being convenient. But now, after months of peace, clarity, and real growth, I saw the full picture. I hadn't lost a family, I'd escaped a cycle. The real breakthrough came one quiet evening as I unpacked a few final boxes in my new place. The air smelled like freedom, warm pizza, clean laundry, and no trace of guilt. No one was calling to ask for another favor. No one was showing up with demands disguised as love. For the first time in my life, I was free to make decisions based on what I wanted, not what someone else expected. That's when it hit me. Family is not defined by blood, but by respect, safety, and mutual care. And those who fail to offer that don't deserve a front row seat in your life, no matter what title they hold. The more distance I kept, the more I found myself surrounded by chosen family, people who checked in just to ask how I was doing, not because they needed something. Friends who celebrated my wins and held space for my hard days. A partner who loved me not for what I gave, but for who I was. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Uplifting, grounding, real. I don't regret walking away. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret the years I spent trying to earn love from people who treated it like a transaction. But those regrets are fading, replaced with a sense of power and peace I never thought possible. If you've ever felt like you're the only one walking away from a toxic family, know this: you're not alone, and you're not wrong for choosing your peace. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this.